finally, in conclusion, anytime that you are doing progressive overload and you start to hit a plateau, here is what you need to do to push past it and peak even higher using fatigue management and recovery protocols in the optimal order as well. So anytime you're feeling limited by fatigue or starting to plateau, use these in this order. All right, first and foremost, you want to hydrate. Lack of sufficient hydration is one of the primary causes of acute fatigue. All right, so when you're feeling fatigued, the first thing you want to do is to make sure you are as hydrated as you need to be. And you should be drinking water constantly throughout your training and throughout the rest of the day too. Maybe not as much as when you're training, but you should be getting a lot of water. So make sure that you stay hydrated and don't do so with tap water. If you do not already know this, tap water contains a lot of chemicals in it to kill any microbes or viruses or germs in it. So that A, is bad for your digestive tract and will kill your flora, and B, it's also not very hydrating. A lot of these chemicals are very acidic, so the tap water has a very low pH. It means it's very acidic, and it's not very hydrating. So what you want to do is to drink purified water, bottled water like spring water, or better yet, electrolyte enhanced water that is specifically for getting extreme hydration, or certain sports drinks. I wouldn't say Gatorade. That's really just salt, sugar, and water. But any electrolyte enhanced water, especially with a higher pH, the higher the pH, the better. That means the more alkaline it is, will be very helpful in hydrating you and fighting any fatigue you might have been feeling that was very acute. And what you learn in my diet course is that studies have actually shown that people who are not 100% hydrated actually lose reps, all right? And that even being 1% to 2% dehydrated causes you to be not completing your set to the fullest amount of reps you could be doing, all right? So that is very significant, all right? So you need to make sure you stay hydrated. And then next, you want to get more macros, all right? Make sure you are eating enough and getting enough macros, and you want to be eating more healthy foods and less unhealthy foods. So just makes sense, right? And then the next thing is you want to get more sleep. Start tacking on extra hours of sleep and making sure that you are entering the deepest sleep, getting the highest quality sleep possible when you are napping or anytime you're sleeping during the day. You really want to use an eye mask, right? Now, you can use these cheap ones that you can get for like a couple dollars, or they hand them out on airplanes. And these aren't that great because I'm still getting little bits of light around the edges, and they're not very breathable. You really want to get one that has actual eye holes in it that forms a seal around your eyes but is also breathable. All right, so now I'm fully immersed in darkness. So if I were to go take a nap, my brain would secrete melatonin out into a deep sleep, and I would actually get the full rest and recovery effect that I'm looking for. And then the next thing you want to be doing is stretching and other recovery protocols, such as the hot or cold therapy and massage, and just do as many recovery protocols as you need or have time for and can. And then you want to look at your relative effort and your ergonomic resources and just try to balance your energy and effort. All right, and to learn how to do that, check out my class on energy and effort and intensity in the last part on progressive overload. All right, and then you want to start looking at your stimulus to fatigue ratios and monitoring and managing that, and be lowering it with any exercises it's getting high with, so that fatigue is not your limiting factor. And also be looking for other limiting factors that you can reduce, so that they're not limiting you with your hypertrophy training and only your target muscle is. Okay, so things like your grip strength, right, or your knee stability. You want to use straps so that these things are not your limiting factors. And then with any exercises that you cannot lower the SFR of, you want to stop doing them and switch them out for some other exercises that will have a better SFR. Or with exercises that you absolutely must keep, you would just want to stop doing progressive overload with the loading and intensity, all right, because that's going to be the biggest factor causing the SFR to go from being lower to higher, all right? So stop progressive overload of weight and maybe even pull it back a little in order to balance that SFR out. Instead of focusing so much of your energies on progressing into strength training and the lower rep ranges, figure in some more technique work. All right, work on some difficult skills or some advanced hypertrophy technique. There's other things that you can be doing in order to make your training harder and harder without increasing the weight and the intensity and the SFRs so much, and that is focusing on the technical difficulty and doing more technique work. All right, so you want to dial back the hard, intense stuff a bit and figure in more technique work. And then also, as you're doing progressive overload of volume, you want to make sure that you are allocating it into a manageable spread as you continue to add more and more of it. All right, you do not want to be creating big fatiguing sessions. Okay, so anytime you have a fatiguing session, you want to look at it and wonder to yourself if it ought to be broken up further. All right, and if you're doing too much work in this one session and could benefit from doing more smaller sessions, as that's really going to help you to manage fatigue and recover more between your sessions. So you could go from training every other day, full body, to training twice per day, and doing 2 small workouts, one in the morning and one in the evening, and that is going to be a much more manageable way to spread out your volume and energies. It's really going to help you to manage your ergonomic resources and not accumulate any more fatigue than you need to by not overworking yourself. And then beyond that, what can happen as you do a lot of progressive overload is that you will start to max out certain muscles and movement patterns when others haven't maybe maxed out yet. So if you want to keep going and doing progressive overload beyond that, you could stop doing it for certain muscles and movement patterns where you've done enough of it, and either keep it there or dial it back while you continue to do progressive overload for other muscles and movements that can handle it. All right, and as you near the end of your block of progressive overload and are supposed to be maxing out your efforts and doing RPE 10 plus, just know that you do not have to do that every single day. You can actually do some lower RPE days in order to balance out the higher ones and manage your energies and ergonomic resources better. Like I said, you need to be balancing your relative effort, and you do not need to go balls to the wall and past failure every single day. What I do is when I start doing 9 RPE, the first day of that training week, I'll have some exercises at the beginning of that workout that I will go to failure or maybe even a little bit past it on, offer myself a little bit of assistance or, some cheat reps on the end. And then the next week, I'll call it a 9+ week. And so in the first half of that week, I'll be going to failure, maybe a little bit past it, and then the rest of that week, I'll be going to 9. And then the next week, I'll have a 10 and 10+ week. And so in the first part of the week, I'll be going beyond failure. And in the next part, I'll be going to failure, but not in every single set either, all right? So even if you're going about to failure every single day, you can also be doing it differently for different exercises. You could be going past failure on certain exercises and only to 9 RPE or maybe even 8 on others. But whatever level you choose to do this on, if fatigue is a problem and you need to balance your energies better, then doing some lower RPE work to sort of counterbalance the really high work where you're going to and past failure can really be helpful. All right, and if you need to do more than that, and you still want to keep pushing further, like maybe you're in the last week of your mesocycle, your block of progressive overload, and you want to be able to finish up that week, but you feel like you've accumulated too much fatigue and are really struggling to go on, then what you would want to do is to actually choose a day or maybe more than one day that week where you are going to bring back your training or just have a complete rest and recovery day. All right, so you got a couple days that week where you want to set a PR or something. Any other day where you have work that could be sacrificed, accessory work, or exercises that just aren't that important to you, you want to make a sacrifice of those exercises to the PRs or whatever intense work that you want to be able to complete. So subtract some of the workload that you're going to be doing and substitute in some additional rest and recovery time. And that should really help give you the extra energy you need to fight the fatigue and make it through to the very end of your progressive overload. And the only thing to do after that is to end the cycle and do a good deload week at your maintenance volume, which should be about 50% of everything that you were doing. All right, you're going to cut it all in half. the amount of weight, the amount of sets, the amount of reps. Even the RPE goes down to 5, or you could even do an active rest phase. But basically, you want to take a week between blocks to focus entirely on rest and recovery, not on work. All right, and then you will be able to come back stronger and push yourself even harder than before and do more progressive overload and make more progress and get more gains. And you'll find that with these recovery protocols, when you are actually using them, you will find that you can push yourself harder and further in your progressive overload than you ever have before. Okay, but you have to make time to do these things and actually do them. Getting fit or muscular or athletic in whatever way that you want to is not just about hitting the gym. All right, you've got to take care of your bodies in all of the other ways that it needs in order to recover optimally. And what you'll find is that when you actually start using these and you start then going further with your progressive overload, if you use all of them at once, you can do some amazing things that you have never even thought about doing before. You'll be able to lift more weight than you ever have before, like you saw me do in my legs training video, where I squatted like 600 pounds and then leg pressed 700 and change, and those weights are like 3 and almost 4 times my body weight, right? And yeah, I was able to do them with the right amount of progressive overload and being able to take my progressive overload much further than I had the block before and the block before that and the training year before that, right? But pushing myself harder and further was only made possible by the amount of time I was spending in recovery. And now that I'm nearing the end of my training year, I've done a couple more blocks of progressive overload on top of that. I switched my focus a little bit away from the progressive overload of weight and have started doing progressive overload in some other ways that I never have before. So what I'm doing now that I'm in my very last mesocycle or block of the year and nearing the end of it is I am training with an incredibly high volume and doing multiple times a day training. All right, last week I was doing 2 times a day, every single day, 6 days a week. And for this microcycle, or this week, I'm doing 3 times a day training for 7 whole days in a row. And what I'm doing with this split is I'm training every single muscle group at its ideal volume and frequency. So this has been meticulously plotted out, and I'm basically performing at a height I've never reached before, like basically training like a actual professional athlete does, having to make it basically my day job because I've got so much training I want to do in a day. And so I've reached a certain peak, and I have only done so again because of recovery protocols. Without these recovery protocols, I would have ended my block of progressive overload a few weeks ago. All right, I started to hit failure a little bit here and there with certain exercises and feel really fatigued after my sessions a few weeks ago, and so that's when I would normally have just ended my block the next week, but that's when I decided to change my split and do some recovery protocols every day and see if that allows me to manage my fatigue and recover better and thus train harder. And it did. So I've been able to push myself harder and harder from week to week. I ended up doing so well with my volume for the couple weeks that I was doing a twice daily exercise, basically doing more and more recovery protocols along with my volume accumulation. And so then I had so much volume I needed to split it up into 3 times daily and give every muscle group its ideal frequency, something I've actually wanted to do because it's something that professional bodybuilders, who do shows do. And the only reason I'm able to do that is because I'm using recovery protocols in between training sessions. Okay, so in between training sessions, I am stretching the muscles and joints that I just used in the last training session. I'm eating a meal, replenishing my macro and micronutrients, and then I'm maybe going for a walk to loosen up or doing some mobility drills, and then taking a nap if I can, or a salt bath. Basically, doing all of these things gives me the ability to get all of my fatigue down, recover, and replenish my ergonomic resources, and be able to train again. And then later in the day, after my 3rd session, I will then, take a hot salt bath and then do the cold therapy as well. And then after that, I'll stretch my spine, and then I will use my vibrating massage wand on my muscles. Any aches and pains that I have in my muscles will be soothed with that, and then I will go to bed by reading or meditating or listening to a hypnosis track, something like that, and get a solid 10 hours of sleep, maybe even 12 if I've trained really hard and didn't get a nap. All right, so it's all of that recovery that allows me to push myself to train so hard. That is basically what gives me the ability to do 3 sessions a day without exhausting myself. I mean, look at me right now. I did that today. And if, for instance, I had tried to do all of that volume in one session, I would have been burnt out halfway. Because in order to do progressive overload to your MRV for all of your muscle groups, that much volume requires being split up into many different sessions and recovering between them. So it's the modulation of the volume and recovering in between sessions that gives you the ability to do so much progressive overload with volume. So, like I said, doing recovery protocols are going to help you to hit new PRs and reach new heights and peaks that you have never reached before. And what you can find is that with optimal recovery, your MRV is going to be a lot higher, and you're going to be able to spend more time going from your MAV to your MRV, which is basically the zone that you are in when you are peaking, right? So you're going to be able to make your peaks bigger and higher. Understand? That is the glory of recovery. And if you push yourself hard enough, you might get to the point where you're using all of these recovery protocols that I taught you, and that's probably a good sign that you have actually hit your MRV and maxed out. And then it's time for you to use the last resort recovery protocol of just taking a deload week and then doing more progressive overload and pushing yourself to the max again, which will be even further next time. All right, so these recovery protocols allow you to really push yourself to the max and achieve your maximum potential, like I said, especially when you are using them all together. Just make sure that you do not push yourself too hard, deload when you need to, and start over, because you can always do more and go further in the next mesocycle. So that is the checklist of everything that you need to do to manage fatigue and recover and push past plateaus into even bigger peaks. And the basic principle that you should have noticed throughout this class is that as the amount of work that you are doing goes up, your workload or your volume, and the intensity of the work or the workload in weight, the more rest and recovery is needed. All right, and the more volume and frequency manipulations and volume allocation and energy allocation you need. So it's really all about managing your ergonomic resources and energy balance. And you want to do this by having a sort of multi-pronged or multifaceted, holistic, systematic approach. All right, you want to be doing this from all angles. Fatigue management, sleep, nutrition, other recovery protocols, and everything I just taught you to do as you're doing progressive overload in order to push through those plateaus. And basically, as you push yourself more and more in order to, work harder and harder and make more and more progress, you want to be focusing not just on working out harder and harder and doing more and more exercise-wise, but doing more and more recovery-wise as well. And then you will be able to grow so much more than you had before, and you will see so many more gains, okay? Because remember, recovery is the most important factor for growth. It is when the hypertrophy adaptations are being made. And without that recovery, harder work is not actually going to result in more growth, but only injury. All right, so make sure you use everything I have just taught you, and I guarantee you, you will see new higher peaks and a much greater level of performance and results than you ever have seen before. And that being said, that actually concludes this final class, not only in this phase number 7, but in the entire first semester of Fitness Programming 101. And so you now know everything you need to in order to program your own fitness routines and your own blocks of progressive overload and longer term programs made up of them. And so that is why I am leaving you now for a summer break, so that you can practice everything that you have learned and put it into use by using it to formulate your own blocks of progressive overload over the upcoming months. You should have time to do 1 or 2 of them, maybe even 3 if they are shorter. All right, so you should be able to get some really good practice in over for the summer, or maybe instead of one of those blocks, do an active rest phase and focus on your recovery more. Either way, you are going to be able to use the working knowledge you now have to take you through the summer and continue to create the adaptations and make the progress that you want. And you don't have to worry about not hearing from me for months. I'm actually going to be releasing some bonus content over the summer, and there'll be more on that in the next video, which is going to be on the ending of this first semester and everything you need to know about moving forward on this channel. I hope you found this class helpful. Now, make sure to put what information you learned into practice right away before you forget, okay? That way it can actually go to work for you, because speed of implementation is one of the keys to success. If you have any questions or need any help, be sure to let me know either in the comments below or by the email address that is in the video description below. And if you are passionate about fitness but don't have time to do all of your own programming yourself and would like to have an expert programmer like me create and manage all of your fitness routines and planning for you, who can systematize your training so that you can reach your goals as fast as possible, be sure to inquire about my online personal training and fitness programming services. No matter what your schedule, budget, or goals, I can formulate the exact right program for you that will expedite your progress and growth and get you the body you want sooner rather than later, okay? And without ever spinning your wheels in the mud or hitting a plateau. And if you liked anything that I said in this video, be sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button and notification bell too, so that you can get all of my other videos that are like this one. And just remember that these videos are actually part of a course that is laid out in a linear fashion. So make sure you have seen all of the videos before this one that you need to see, and that you are subscribed and will continue to watch the videos that you watch on this channel in the order that they are presented